Wednesday, December 19th is now in order, and I'm letting folks know that this meeting is being recorded for the public. And we have no minutes to approve yet. We'll have the minutes for last week probably at our next meeting. So the first item on our agenda is an update on the site planning options, and that's the pros and cons that we started to look at last week.
Okay, so I'm here, Bob Bell from Perkins Easton. I'm joined by Ashley Iannuccelli from Traverse Landscape Architects. And basically, we just have a few updates from our last meeting here. We had a few broad comments about maybe some circulation requirements, as well as trying to preserve the softball fields whenever possible. So that's really the genesis for some of these changes. It's also the moment where we get to just recap and look through the options. And tonight would be the night that after we look at the options and we look at the costs, that we discuss the range of options, and if all should be submitted, if some should really are proven not feasible. So, just to begin with, we also have new letter designations.
So this is all
everybody has this handout. Well, they have the basically the matrix, which is a summary.
Right.
Of so we've labeled the options as well. It's easier for cost and other purposes. So you'll see new letter designations. This is planning option C1, and there's a description below it. It's the center school ad reno on the center site for 235 students. And these are, by and large, the pros and cons that you've seen before, and I'll highlight what's changed. One thing we did was to we looked a little closer inside the building, and when we consider how this gets constructed and how it would need to be phased, we realized it's just a small thing, but where we have the gym versus the calf kitchen position, we'll probably have to flip those two, because there's a dotted line that shows the existing building, some of which we would reuse, but the idea would be to build as much new as you can, and we'd really obviously like to build the kitchen in the first phase before we touch the existing building, so then it can come online. So that's really just an internal thing. It doesn't affect the overall option. We did start to look at different ways to circulate on the site and swap a few things. So I think the last time you saw this option, we showed buses in the back. There's plenty of room for them. Remember, this is only 235 students. And we had cars in the front. So one of the things we tried to do was maximize the car queue as much as possible. So this is really a variant. It doesn't mean we'd be locked into it, but here now we're showing cars circulating through this back loop here, and buses would actually be in the front. So in this reconfiguration, what has changed is we have a little bit less play space. We had 89,000 square feet previously. We now show 85,000 square feet. It's still certainly well over the target of 40 to 63,000. We tried to fit a softball field on the site, but dimensionally couldn't do it. We were just kind of locked with some of the proportions. Not to say we can't keep working on it, so that remains a con, that you would lose a softball field, not only temporarily while it's being built, but in the finished product. And it remains to be seen, but there's the possibility that that could be replicated off-site, maybe where another place.
We also did look at removing that pond too, knowing it's a liner, to put that softball field on there as well. And unfortunately, the orientation is not optimal, but also the field is so close to the school that you have to worry about foul balls hitting it, and it's just a really, really tight fit. I think in the street, too tight for comfort.
So the big milestone in this option was we were able to change a red to a green. So where we formerly only had about a 16 car queue, we're now able to fit 62 by switching those two. So you would say this is certainly a viable option. It's an ad reno of the center school as you know it. Is there anything else?
No, I think this discussion of, is there potential to pull either buses or cars off of School Street is an interesting one, and we've actually shown it differently on the next option. Initially, we were thinking buses would have a potential less impact if we pulled those off of School Street. But actually, in this option, having the car queue come off of school and getting the ability to stack 62 cars eliminates kind of this overflow into the streets and could potentially clear up some congestion. So I think that could be a benefit to this scenario.
The other thing we have updated on all of these, but I'll save it for the agenda item, is we're now including everything on these sheets, including very preliminary costs, and I'll just repeat that these are comparative costs, they're not actual. We have very limited information, so this is just to kind of gauge options to each other. It's not an absolute cost. So the next option, C2, is the all-new construction of the center school on the center school site, so for 235 students. What has changed here, what hasn't changed is that we're still building a similar building behind the existing. So from a phasing or construction point of view, it's as clean as it can be. Here you can see the major differences are that we are able to fit a softball field dimensionally. We are also in this one, as Ashley had mentioned, just trying out the alternative where cars would use the loop in the front and buses would use the loop in the back. So the end result of this is, what has changed is we took what used to be about 49,000 square feet of play space, and it's up to about 100,000 square feet. So that's a significant jump. Previously, as well as now, it still was within the target. We're actually over the target. The softball field would be, obviously an asset and something that we were asked to look at. You would, however, lose the softball field temporarily. So while the building is being built and the existing school remains, obviously the duration of construction that we would want to the softball field. And as far as the car queue, we were able to, even though we kept the car queue in the front on this one, the reconfiguration that Ashley came up with yields about 10 more cars. So we used to have 22, now we have 32 cars in the queue, and that exceeds the target of 20 to 25. And again, it's many cars as we can pull off the street as possible, obviously.
The only thing I would add is this option is also nice because you have visitor parking in the front located off the car queue, and then we also have the opportunity for staff parking in the back, where you see that bus route too, which is fairly convenient. And we're also trying to break up the play spaces. I think you'll see that in all these options now, where we're not showing one big consolidated structure playground. We're really looking at trying to move those around the site so that they could be specific to different grades or, just breaking up the play areas.
We're now getting into combined school models. Nothing has changed on the site here. We certainly weren't able to attempt a softball field. We also don't have a reasonable means to further maximize vehicular queuing or circulation, certainly not at the expense of already short play space. So none of the statistics have changed on this option, and the highlights we've been talking about are that it not only limits future expansion because the building is so large, but on this site in particular, but we're really not meeting the play space goals. In this case, at the combined school, the goal was 114 to 190,000. We're only 66,000 square feet of play space. And as well as the car queue, we're looking for a 60 to 75 target. I would say even more if we could, again, because of Eco Street. And we're only able to get 28 car queues, so that's a critical flaw, I think, for this one. Similarly, if I move on to option, DW, by the way, stands for district-wide, so district-wide option 3 is all new construction on the center school site. This one also, we haven't really changed much. We're including costs in all of them. This one, as far as the highlights go, we have a very, very much bigger footprint. It's built, if you will, over the existing building, but the way it would be constructed is this back wing would be built first, and then the students would move into that would house sufficient classroom space and other things to allow them to move in, and then the existing building would come down and the rest of the school would be built. This one, just like the last option, however, I would say has some critical flaws in that we only have 117 76. We only have a 28 car queue. We're looking for 60 to 75. Certainly no softball field. Play space is at 17,000, where we're looking for 114 to 190,000. So falling well short.
Can I ask you what the abbreviation is in the preliminary cost? You have 77 million construction,
Yeah.
97 million total, 66 million
District share. So, because that'll be covered in detail when we get to it, I felt okay abbreviating it. There's
Sure.
a lot of words kind of crammed in here, but that'll become clear. It is, there are, as we talk about the language of cost, there isn't just one number, but it's what they call construction cost versus project cost, total budget. And then, of course, when the MSBA provides reimbursement, there's a calculation to get to the approximate share.
Okay, great.
So now we've moved over to the Parkview site, so district-wide option 3. I'm sorry, I'm done yet. There we go. District-wide option 2, which is an ad reno. So you can see that this keeps the existing Parkview school, most of it, and then there's a large amount of construction toward the back. We did do some substantial changes here. You can see with landscape, we were able to fit one of 2 softball fields on the site. And we were also able to look at do a change to the vehicular circulation so that we are down a little bit on play space from 186 down to 168, but we're certainly within the target range of 114 to 190,000 square feet. We are also able to meet the bus queue of 16. In this case, Ashley will go into some detail, but it's in 2 waves. And we are able to, the prior car queue had a range of 33 to 50, and what it's looking like now is 40 to 60. So it's improved a bit.
So, Manoj presented a couple circulation options to you in the last meeting, and this is taking advantage of that second option where we potentially create this new connector road that would be going to Columbus. And this is just an idea, this isn't saying this has to be done like this, but it is a potential to alleviate some of the congestion that we're seeing now and make it a stronger entry point. But in this scheme, we're bringing in buses from Schooner Street, potentially. They could also come in this way from Columbus as well. You still have Lothrop coming through. Because of the way the building is situated on the site, closer to the front, we don't have enough space for the 16 buses to stack. We just don't have enough run. But what we can do is potentially have the buses come in 2 waves. So what you see is 8 or 9 buses being able to stack right in the front of the school. This would only be for an afternoon pickup. And then we would create another bus lane right in the back here. So kids would get on the bus in one wave, buses would leave, the other buses would pull up, and then the kids would get on those buses then. And then for car queue, we have a car queue wrapping this way around the building. And again, the reason the car queue is shorter than what you're going to see in the combined new option is just physically where this building is on the site. But we can stack those cars here, and then they wrap, and then they could come out using this new connector road there.
And one of the things I think, we had a lot of discussion about the bus loop. It doesn't mean 2 run the buses, it just means they're dismissed in waves. And in some ways it's nice because it kind of shortens the amount of buses and the kids kind of using the sidewalk or coming out of the building to board the buses. You'll see in the next option, we can implement something like this, but in the next option you'll see the full length of buses creates quite a long run for students to walk.
And can I just ask, and this is really probably a question for Ann, I'm assuming in the morning at drop-off, that's not as big an issue because they are staggered naturally. All the buses don't arrive at
The same is
exactly.
true in the afternoon.
Right. Oh, really?
Our buses, all 6 buses are never there at the same time.
So then that could potentially work out well.
Right.
But would that wouldn't necessarily be true with all the schools combined, because wouldn't the runs be
We're
different?
still waiting for our.
Right. You're waiting
It'd be
for
for the
the Arrow
Arrow, okay.
buses, right?
Yeah.
So I think as far as, statistics, I think I've gone over those. We're also including costs here, we'll go into more detail. Because we're able to get one softball field on, much like the other options, we probably lose that both softball fields temporarily while construction is going on. One would be able to be built here, but then want to replicate one off-site somewhere. The last option is all new construction on the Parkview site, and it's similar to what we saw on the center school site. We're building all new construction behind the existing school, so that it can be phased properly. And part of what Ashley was talking about is that position, kind of to the south on the site, also helps with car queues and circulation on the site, creating more volume. So in this case, we are able to add 2 softball fields. We know there's probably a little massaging to go on here, so we don't get the overlap. In this case, we've maintained the public way, Spooner Street, and it goes around that softball field to allow the dimensional fields to
I
exist.
would like to add a caveat with the softball fields. I've shown one as a full-size softball field in the back, and then I've shown the other one as dashed, and the reason for that is, I think if we did push and pull and tweak things, we could probably make them fit. But what you see is that one softball field is quite close to the school, so again, I think you might have that issue with foul balls, and that's something that we need to consider moving forward, if that's the best place for a second field, or if that would be better used by students and just open green space with the one big field in the back.
And one of the things our traffic engineer mentioned, that when we step out and look at the whole campus, there may be the opportunity, it looks like there's the opportunity to take some existing parking and bend it a little bit to yield more green in this area, so there may be other options to fit softball. That remains to be seen.
Is that, when you come up Spooner, is that the existing parking lot? It's not pushed further into the trees?
So that's a good question. So in this option, because Spooner Street is really dedicated to this site and the usage of this site, we have looked at actually shifting that roadway back, so almost to the edge where that existing parking lot is now. And what that does is suddenly those fields that were separated by this roadway, now they're actually part of the school site.
And that would really impact the traffic from the middle school, because the middle school now uses Spooner as a cut through. Right, so this completely cuts that off.
Well, they just relocated it through the back way. So you can still have it, but it's just a little bit finessed, so it runs along the perimeter.
But then it would have to, they'd have to go out that new access road.
They could
That's
potentially.
not, I see green after that, is that not?
No, that
That's
could
not
potentially.
gonna go straight through?
That could still potentially go straight through. I've limited myself to our
To
site,
Columbus,
but yes.
that would go through to Columbus.
I get that, but the parking lot now
She's saying
connects,
we
but
could
it doesn't
connect
connect to Spooner
Right.
You
anymore.
could connect that. You've
Yeah.
just not shown that here, but yes, that is a possibility.
But,
Is
I don't know
the-
that we want to.
Right.
Is
exactly.
the loop constructed to be one-way traffic flow, or both
So-
ways going around the back of the field?
So this here with Spooner, or
Yeah.
we look
Yeah.
at Spooner, this would be two-way, and yes, this connection's possible if we wanted it. And then the buses would come in like this, stack up, and then go out. So this would be one way here. And just an aside, what's nice about having the buses here is that during the day, you could completely block off that lane, so all of that could be hard flagged with this great connection to the field space. And then again, you have, I think, most of the parents coming off from Spooner Street here and wrapping around the drop-off, and then they could exit back out this new connector road to Columbus.
And is on this front end here, is that Lothrop? Or is that
Yeah.
a driveway parallel to Lothrop?
Nope, this is Lothrop.
So it's a driveway. that's
Right,
right.
oh yes, this is in
They're
terms
not
of the
there.
site.
So you couldn't access the school from Lothrop?
No, not to say that's not a possibility, but in this scheme, we're saying we're not accessing the school from Lothrop Street. Though it is, that has been brought up before, and I think it's an option that could be studied moving forward.
and I think last week when we saw when we had done the traffic patterns, that we first saw last week, I think one of the things that appealed to a lot of us was you were eliminating the middle school parking lot as kind of the cut-through access. Because I think that there are significant problems that arise because of that. So,
How would you do that?
how would you do?
Just block it?
Well,
What's
so,
the
The
read?
middle
right.
school going down from park.
So,
They come to, 2 in the morning.
they
it's
come,
100
but they
cars.
come through the middle school parking lot, and if you see now, there's no longer a connection between the middle school parking lot and that road. So they couldn't cut through them at middle school parking lot anyway.
They would have to loop around and go back out
Right,
Columbus.
they'd have to go,
Around the whole.
right, this way,
And go back out Columbus.
Yeah, right, some of them do that.
yeah,
So how would you get to the middle school now?
Columbus,
Columbus.
Columbus, or the back down,
Because right now you can't get to the middle school from Columbus, right?
Right, it would affect, they'd have to determine the best,
right.
they might have
Right.
to change off their drop off and pick up.
So this is
Because
all.
right now they've cut off Columbus for parents to drop off in the morning. It all comes from the back. And, yeah,
So you'll see this option, we showed this connection remaining. So this could easily be transferred to this option here. I think these are all just possibilities we're exploring.
Right.
If there was some benefit to cutting that off.
yeah, it's interesting. And I'm just asking to be clear. I don't know if it would be better or worse. I've always, and I've never worked up here, but I've always thought that was quite a dangerous ongoing traffic flow
Yeah, it
for
is.
multiple schools. And kids, we have kids walking too on sidewalks and
Yeah.
whatnot.
So
And they line up
we could
there
always
as
put in
well.
we could always put in a walkway.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Well,
yeah.
Walking would
and
be great,
for
but
the
I think what will
pedestrians and
happen
cars.
is if we land on this, obviously then we're looking at a campus-wide traffic study. So,
And that's where we can also look at if, if there wants to be a connection to Woodford Street. Maybe that roadway does want to connect, maybe it doesn't. I think once we start exploring the actual traffic counts, that's when we'll get a real feel for that.
And that land where you have that new connection to Columbus is part of our school property now.
It's part of town property. It's shown as different parcels, but it's owned by the town.
Okay.
And so as far as the statistics, we see a drop from what was 221,000 square feet of play to 188, but it's still well above, or at the upper end of the target, which is 114 to 190. And we previously had 65 car queue, now that's up to 75. So in general, it's working better, but the level that we're at again is feasibility. So this is really more about seeing if these are feasible and certainly some more options or alternates that are possible.
Is the squiggly white
Well, I was just gonna ask, what's
on the
the-
right, is that a walking
It's
path?
a walking path,
That's
because there is
beautiful.
there's like you can tell people there's a crosswalk there, and you can tell there could be a connection. I don't think it could be a vehicular connection, but it could certainly be,
Like a bike path, yeah.
Where
It's a
is,
hot road. It's like,
Sheridan,
I
next
live
to
on
Sheridan.
Foley Street, the only house on that street. That's a very confusing.
In all the options, this is really, we've been through them all, but all of them you'll see where possible,
Yeah.
Pedestrian connections, but also outdoor learning space connections, even, on Center School, we've worked to get outdoor learning in
Right.
a couple of different locations.
I wasn't sure if that was a gazebo.
So we'll move on to costs. I'm sorry, were there any other questions?
All right, so, last meeting, Chad and I presented, some total project costs. Since then, what we told you guys we were gonna do is go through and really, look at what a potential district share, would look like for each one of the scenarios that Bob has just talked about. There's a lot of different items that go into that. If you look at the handout, the spreadsheet handout, which would be the back side of that. The top section, I don't have it up there, it's too small to read. The top section has different differentiators for each project. Demolition, hazmat, and abatement, different site costs, and traffic signals, things that we can identify at this time. So that's the 5 bars that are highlighted in yellow. As you move through, It brings you, there's a lot of calculations that go into that. There's markups on all of the construction. That's the top 4 gray bars. Then down below that, there's a gray section, project soft cost. That's 20% of your total construction. That's a number that we use that the MSBA reimburses up to 20% of project soft costs. So if you get the most reimbursement from them. Inside of that, we do carry a swing space allowance for any type of base repair or ad reno option that we feel would be impacted by the project and we wouldn't be able to work around it. So we carry swing space or modular classrooms. That's a number that Perkins Eastman has worked on getting between the amount of classrooms we feel would be necessary. So that gets you down to your total project budget. From there, what we've done is go through MSBA guidelines and regulations and basically identify as many ineligible project costs as we can. That's the last gray section on the spreadsheet. As you can see, they are different on all the options because there are a lot of different factors that go into each of them. There's different reimbursement rates for renovation and reuse. That's a percentage point that you get on ad renos, but those are most of the time as what we see as outweighed by the impacts of contingencies and the impacts of phasing on those types of projects. So we have the graph up here on the chart, so if you jump back over to the graph, we can kind of run through each of the options that Bob had gone through. The first option you see is the base repair option. It's a requirement to study from the MSBA. It does not address overcrowding. It leaves you close to 10,000 square feet short of what the MSBA would consider right off of their space summary sheet immediately, which that's still not to say that that's the amount of square foot you need. We are calculating a square footage close to 64,000 right now as required to meet the program, so it leaves you severely short of that. But again, code required study, MSBA required study.
That building's 36,000 square feet.
The next option, C1, is the ad reno option at the center school. Potential district share of the total project budget of 37.5 million. Potential grant of 14.2 million and a total project budget of 51.7 million. Running through the new at center school for the 235 student enrollment, 31.7 potential district share and a 13.6 potential grant from the MSBA on a total project budget of 45.3 million. As you move through these next 4 options that we have done out are the combined 760 student plus the pre-K. It's on option DW1, which is the ad reno at the center school. We have a potential district share of 78.5 million, grant of 31.7 million, and a total project cost of 110 million. Ad reno at Parkview, 73.3 million district share, 31.9 potential grant, and $105 million total project budget. The two new at the first at center, $65.5 million district share, $30.9 million potential grant on a $96.4 million total project budget. And then option DW4, the new at the Parkview School, $65 million potential district share, $30.9 million potential grant on a $95.9 million total project budget. The 2 options that are shown on the right of the chart and in the red on the Excel sheet are cost comparisons for Easton, specifically for this committee and the people of Easton. Base repair studies of the Parkview School and base repair study of the Monroe Hall School. Again, both of these base repairs do not satisfy the required square footage that would be needed to meet the MSBA guidelines for a potential project. These are just code repairs, base upgrades that would need to be done. So when you look at the shares for the 3 projects combined, you can see that that adds up to about $88 to $89 million. If you were to take the base repair for Center, the base repair for Parkview, and the base repair for Monroe Hall. And when you're looking at that compared to a district-wide option, those 4 options that we have on the table are both, at this point in time, lower than the base repairs. Chad, anything you'd like to add to it?
So one question we're gonna get a million times is, why is it cheaper to build a new building to repair? Which is really not what this is saying. It's actually less cost to repair the 3 buildings. But where it becomes less expensive is for Easton is district share. So once we get the MSBA engaged, we've satisfied the educational program, demonstrated that the space needs are satisfied by that proposed project. That's really what kind of tips the scales. The other major driver between these addition renovation and construction projects are the addition renovations are set up right now that they are occupied phase projects. So that means in some cases we need swing space, we need modulars. In all the ad rentals, we are using a different procurement method. It's a qualification-based selection that has a CMI risk, and there's a premium that's documented with that procurement method. It's 10 to 18%. In all of these across the board, we're fighting against the cost per square foot. The MSBA caps us right now is $333 a square foot. And every dollar above that, $333 is 100% on the district. And so when we're talking about that premium to go with that new procurement type or CMI risk, it falls 100% back on the district. So that's why we're seeing such a balance. So the key to drive that rental cost is find a way to vacate the building and do it all in one phase that takes in a year and a half or 2 years. And ultimately, that's what drives us down to the same ballpark as the construction options.
Well, I don't even know how we would do that within what we have for space in the district. But the other thing I noticed is that in terms of construction timing, it's really it's the combining on the parking site. That's the shortest. Am I reading that correctly? That's a 2-year, no phases construction project versus, with the exception of just the center school population alone, the other ones you're looking at 3 years in 2 phases on all of those.
Right.
So that there's, I don't know what the cost implications of that are, but there's clearly some benefits of a shorter construction phase.
Less disruption to students as well when there's no phasing.
I think one thing this doesn't show is if you go over to the center school options, that's just the center school. Now, triple that. If you're gonna include Parkview in a row, what I come up with is you're over 120 million, and we don't know when that will be done, and inflate that cost. To me, it's almost a no-brainer to invest that money now in a new combined school. But the ones, just to rehab them is not feasible. Like you said, it's like almost 90 million.
You don't gain any square footage that you desperately need.
Right, won't be what we need for space.
But it's your expectation that the MSBA is going to ask for those numbers, what would it cost?
Require, give them the base repair
Yeah.
for the.
But I think if you modified this as someone was asking, and over to the left,
Stack them together.
if you stack the other 2 schools on top, I think it becomes obvious that given time and where we are today, it would make more sense to invest our money more wisely, I think, in a combined school.
We can absolutely show those.
If you think it would be helpful.
Well, and there's no way we're going to remodel all 3 schools for $65 million.
No.
Because that's our expected, or to 878,
Repair,
No, I know, that's why I'm saying, there's no way, because if we're gonna effectively do anything to the other sites, it would have to include, I mean, it would, we would need to include, for the sake of our students and their learning, changes beyond the base repair. So, this is saving millions and millions and millions of dollars for the Easton taxpayers if, you know, if we're looking at being wise about our monies. Stark,
Yeah,
the
if you
difference
did-
is stark.
If you look at that side, if you took 35 million, let's say, for either the new or the rehab at Meadow, the center only, and you tripled that, you know, it's 35, 70, it's 105 million would be our share.
And what's the reasonable expectations that we would get chosen for the MSBA project for Parkview or Moreau? I mean, it could be 10 years, it was 10
Yeah.
years since we had RO.
We use the,
About seven.
not on the site that you're building on, are not are 100% on the district, not reimbursed.
Yes.
Does that 561 average, does that include the, like, additional site work for, traffic flow and things like that?
Right now, what it includes is a $500,000 plug number for traffic signal,
But not the campus wide?
No, it is, so right now, what we're including for site work on a new project is 14%, 12% on addition renovations. We would try to fit as much as we can into that. If we found something along that study that drove that number up, we'd have to call that out as well. But for purposes of this type of comparison, we need to put everything on an apples to apples. We're not calling out this site has this, and we're doing that on it. We need to make all of the decisions based on doing what we feel is the best option for the Parkview site, what we feel is the best option for the center site, and that's what we base our numbers off of.
But just to be clear, when you're talking about, on the Parkview site, adding an extension to Columbus and those walking paths and whatnot, that is included in these estimates because it's considered within the construction site. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, things that feel like they're missing either from the options assessment piece or some clarification around the costing piece that we need? No?
I was just gonna clarify, so the options assessment that you have, you know, is a summary of what we went through on each option. And down at the bottom, you'll see under each category, site, traffic, education, construction, some of the things we've been talking about successively over a number of meetings, and some have come up tonight. So under C1, for example, under education, you can see the big red negative that says inequity for 12 plus years. That's just an estimate. I mean, it could be 20 years, it could be something less, but we put 12 years on it. You can also see under construction, we put the duration, and we've talked about whether it's phased and occupied, and whether you would require modular classrooms. Again, anything like that is already built into the cost, but it's also worth knowing that students would be in kind of these temporary rooms for a bit of time. I think it's C1, I think, is the only one that requires actual modular classrooms. And then we do, under preliminary costs, we list the 39 million construction cost, the total project budget, and then the district share. It's cryptic, it's shortened and abbreviated. And there's also sometimes notes under here too, like just pointing out, even though we're not illustrating the cost, but it's more costly, we know, with Parkview and Moreau to be future projects. So those types of things are listed throughout. If we go over to the district-wide options, you can see that there is talk. Moreau is available for repurposing. For example, if you're on, really, you could say Moreau and Center Park.
So, I guess the conversation we probably need to be thinking about having now is be presenting all of this to the MSBA with a sense of what we think the priorities are at this point in terms of which ones are jump to the top of the list. I mean, I'm assuming we're presenting all of them to the MSBA because they're going to want to see all of the work that's been done in this phase of the project. But at the end of that presentation, we can say, so from this work, it's obvious that the ones we want to continue investigating are these three. Is that an accurate?
That is accurate, yeah. The MSBA would want to hear that in the assessment, if there's some that aren't meeting the goals and needs, that the areas we really want to consider going forward. They tend to like to see it owning, but not too much, so.
They're gonna want, I did speak with Becca Whitten from the MSBA, the project manager, the new project manager. One thing that the MSBA does require that we submit in the PDP and the PSR is the base repair costs. So those are automatically in, but we will speak to them that what they don't meet for the district. But then we are required to carry either a renovation or an add renovation and a new option. And we need to carry one of each of those for both of the configurations.
So we need to carry 4 plus the base repairs.
That was my understanding of the call that I had with her on Monday or Tuesday.
Subsequent to the PDP, that we need to keep looking at those, is that?
We should carry them through the PDP and then early in the PSR, we can
Eliminate
narrow
them.
down from there. Yep.
Early PSR is April?
Be
January,
shortly after.
February.
so
It's
we
January.
should-
Oh, okay.
February,
I was thinking it
the
was
submission's in
reversed.
May.
May, okay, that's fine.
So it's almost like a two-phase narrowing down.
It is.
It's, you know, we go in now with all of these and come out of this continuing with 3 or 4 of them. And then in the March, May timeframe, we've taken those 3 or 4 and selected the one that we want to move forward with. Is that correct?
Can you define what the inequity means? The 12-year inequity?
Yeah, it's a little bit shortened explanation, but that was something that was already brought up. So basically, there's an inequity in that in C1 and C2, the center school gets new facilities, gets the larger rooms, education program, better everything, daylight facilities. In that Parkview and Moreau are left behind for a number of years.
If you're waiting to get into the MSBA program, we, on average, is 7 years. So that could be closer to 14 for the final project to be completed, if you were to do one.
Each school?
It'd be
And
7.
add another 14 onto that to do the third one.
So
No, 7
No,
and then
7
7.
each.
Oh, 7 and 7.
But it's 7 or,
So you're doing
it's
6
still
and
a chunk.
6.
Yep, it's a big,
Yeah.
and that includes.
Talking about almost, yeah,
The
2
inequity, the
entire
escalation of cost,
populations.
construction
Yeah.
costs.
That's if you get in.
That's
There's
if
no
you get in.
guarantee.
Right.
Absolutely.
You can imagine a pretty immediate thing would be, center school has an art room and a music room and, you know, big
I
media
understand.
full gym.
And also, when you're talking about the time, like, it's 2 years of repairing in addition to the up to 3 years of building, so.
And then the ongoing maintenance costs that those buildings do undertake, that's money that doesn't get reimbursed.
Well, if there's a difficult budget here, the MSBA will just cut the percentage of schools that they accept, and, I mean, that's happened before.
They're funded entirely by the sales tax, so if sales tax revenue drops,
Right.
they go slash their budget.
So, at this point, I guess I wonder if folks have thoughts about, obviously, we're going in with all of these, but, you know, for the kind of January to May timeframe, which ones we really should be not focused on anymore?
Is it too simplistic to say which ones have the most red on them?
It sounds simplistic because that's using the data to guide your answers. Yeah, no, that's what makes sense to do, in my opinion.
So, I think,
So the combined, the DW1 and DW3 by far
yeah,
have the most flaws.
and the traffic is, I mean, I don't think, what we're hearing is at this point, there's no creative way to overcome those traffic issues. We don't see any resolution for those. So those are going to be there. So I think Dottie's correct by saying those two have the most red, probably wouldn't wanna continue pursuing those.
Well, not just the traffic, but the lack of play space
Yeah.
for our children.
Yeah.
There are a lot of kids who are going to be attending the school, and outdoor time is so vital.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree.
Other people have thoughts or questions? There is, I think from because it was center school that was selected, I think we are going to need to continue to pursue one or both of the smaller school options in that January to May timeframe. But I don't know if we would recommend doing both of them or picking the one that makes the most sense at this point.
So you will need to carry, we'll need to carry the ad reno
Yeah.
and the new option
Yeah.
for the smaller enrollment
Okay.
at this time.
For the PDP submission, as soon as the PDP is submitted, we get the review comments back, we can take it out of the.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming we're carrying all of these for the PD.
We could,
Based on what I'm hearing tonight, DW1 and DW3.
I think it's a semantic issue.
Okay.
When you say carry, all of these will be submitted as part of the
Thank you.
report, but they're
That's what I
looking in some sense for a conclusion
Okay.
that may
These are
help.
the.
Right.
Yeah, but these are the ones we're gonna keep
Yes,
looking at.
okay, we're actually saying exactly the same
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
You were much clearer about it. So we'll submit all six, and the conclusion will be, we know we don't want to move forward with DW1 and DW3 because of the, pretty significant issues.
Those pluses and minuses are really, viewed aside from the cost. When you add the cost differentials in there too, that really underscores it.
Frankly, I think a center option would be a very difficult sell to
I
the town.
agree.
People are very concerned about equity for their children. And,
The small enrollment,
Right.
any small enrollment.
But we have to.
well, I know we have to understand that that's.
But
fluid,
I agree with
but
you.
I
We
get
can,
that.
we can, in February, we can.
That's my question, is could we, obviously we're presenting this now, but could we say that, we want to eliminate DW1 and DW3 because of the obvious inequities, but we'll continue to explore the other four, but pretty quickly after we start exploring the other four, can we go, do we have to go back to the MS? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, this committee can move forward with that decision after we get MSBA comments back from the PDP in late January, early February.
Based on past feedback, they'll actually be happy to see that the field has been narrowed down to those four options. And that they expect that right out of the gate at PSR, they really want you to arrive at your preferred solution pretty quickly because you need to develop that preferred solution before that May 15th solution.
11.
And I think
Midday.
we have
It's
to
on
look at
there.
this kind of an investment, what does this do for us for the next 50 years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I
Well,
love
and I
this
think-
book. I'm just gonna say I love this book because it is so obvious with the red, but also you kept emphasizing it just doesn't meet our goals, those two that we want to look at. And it is so far short of the goals, it's just blindingly obvious. So it's really a great,
And I think the conversation we're gonna have to have very quickly is really the one that you just brought up, which is, if we were to move forward with a center school only project, where would we stand in terms of the community support? Because it's not a project that's going to meet the needs of all the students in the community. So I think it might be a much more difficult project to sell.
I think you guys have done a really good job of taking a lot of information and boiling it down into a format that is very clear, so thank you for that.
Can I add that the reworking of the landscaping and the parking and the queuing is quite impressive to resolve, especially in the right-hand side solution, to resolve the queuing softball fields. It's really well done.
I wanna say, why didn't we think of that?
Because we're not landscape architects.
Well, I know, but still.
And again,
When you
this was
explain it, though, it seems
the
so-
only design group we interviewed that brought in, a that was one of the reasons that we
Highlight.
Good. We chose.
Yeah.
I asked a question, we were talking earlier about parking.
Can you do me a favor, just identify yourself?
Oh, Mike Sullivan, from here. The new spaces you're gonna get out of, let's say, DW4, where are they coming from? These parking spaces? I mean, you solved this problem, but it's a problem because you don't have enough spaces now, so you're creating more spaces somewhere. Can you tell me where?
Yes, so,
You want to back up the slide?
we've been looking, a couple of these, we're gonna keep exploring these, which is important to know. It's just, we're gonna keep exploring its feasibility, so there's many, many ways we can do this. But in this option, we're looking at decentralizing the parking, so you don't just see one large parking lot. What you're seeing is maybe some visitor parking here, and then you have a larger parking lot over here, then we have another larger parking lot here, and then down this entire stretch, we have additional staff parking as well. So what it's doing, it just doesn't look as massive as when you go back to
You're
a,
taking the ball fields and making parking out of it?
And then recreating.
And then
and
recreating.
then recreating the ball
You don't
fields.
go down, take the ball fields out
Yes.
and make parking lots?
Yep, the current ball fields are right,
No.
They're gonna remove the ball fields, because then they'll be up in the
So,
top. on
look,
the
right
side.
now, Parkview, where it is right now, is in through here. So the whole building is getting moved back to where the ball fields are right now. And then we're recreating up in the front, which right now, the parking for Parkview, so Spooner Street comes straight through now, and the parking is back up there, more or less.
Parking lot now, there's a lot of Spooner Street that just has backyards along Columbus Ave.
Right, that's where that's what I was just pointing to.
Right, what are you gonna do with that? You gonna change those?
Yep, so this is the existing condition right here. So, you're correct, you have the large parking lot here right off of Spooner, and then you have the new school, the old school, I'm sorry, the existing condition located right here closer to the front. So when we looked at options of where the new school can go, logically, this is really the only space that it'll fit. So what we're doing is just inverting those two things. We're taking the parking and the green space, and we're switching it to where the school is. Supposed to go.
All right. Columbus Ave runs parallel to the school. Right
So
now,
here's
parking lot
Columbus.
is a third of, there's backyards all the way up.
Right.
Are you saying those are gonna become parking lots?
No.
No.
Quite the obvious, the opposite, actually. I think this is a much better solution, because now you just have a small roadway, and beyond that, you actually have open green space, which I would think would be much more appealing than.
It's not cutting into the backyard at all.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
space
if
is
the
It's
whole
green
street, that goes
space.
all the way up to the
Right.
middle school?
It's not gonna be,
It's
it's
gonna
not,
be green space.
they're not gonna be taking away anybody's property
Okay.
in this, I can see why you would think it, because it does look like it's
Bigger.
scooping back into
Yeah.
it, but it's not.
That's why I asked that
The
question.
footprint
No,
is
you did, you look
bigger.
at kind of,
Yeah,
things
yeah.
though. 'Cause you don't see parking spaces
Right,
really on
and,
this.
and the reason why this new school needs to be built in the existing fields is if we were to tear Parkview down and build a new school at where the existing Parkview is, all those students are gonna be displaced. And this way, if we were to go with the DW4, which is what we're looking at, the students are not displaced at all, and we don't have to pay for swing space either to move them
I
into.
think it's a wonderful idea.
Good, awesome. I just wanna make sure we were clear on
Now,
that.
on the placing of the new school though, they're gonna be going towards the police and fire department.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
How close are they gonna get to that? police?
Right,
Close.
here's
I mean, that's-
Lothrop.
where's Lothrop?
Right there, that's Lothrop.
But we do
So
have,
they're
it's
darn
where the-
close, they're gonna
yes,
be darn.
yes.
That's where the fields are now,
What?
softball and soccer.
Yes, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where the building's gonna exist, so it's,
it's close, but
Maybe
there's a
soccer,
50-foot setback, so it's actually set further back from, there's a 50-foot front setback,
So
so
it
we're
looks
actually
like
set
more than
further
100.
back, so it's almost 100.
And again, I
Oh,
think,
okay.
Yeah, from the
this
road.
is not the final,
Oh, no. I
We all
we'll
know.
test it, but it gives you.
Wait, I just wanna make sure that was clear for everybody. You said, even though it looks like in the drawing it's right out, you have 100 feet between the roadway and the front of the building from Lothrop.
This line
Okay.
here is your 50-foot setback, and
Yeah.
then here's the building, so it's almost double that.
It's a little weird when it's not,
That's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, but we got it.
What are the white checkered things? Is that like overhang?
It's like plaza space, we're saying hardscape.
Plaza?
Yeah. We're
Just
just
my
trying
little
to get
patio
areas
cafe.
to drop
Like
off.
hopscotch.
Foursquare.
Where's the physical frontage?
There's more than one entrance, so,
Right.
what we're showing on this plan, for example, is,
One there, right?
this is primarily this is, not primarily, this is the grade 1 to 2
Yeah,
side of the building, so we have a, if you will, a main entry here for grade 1 to 2.
yeah.
They could have a secondary entrance down here that could be manned, but
Yes.
the administration is up here. For the pre-K wing, which is over here, we've shortened the distance and we have an entrance right in the middle, so there's only a short way to go for students. So 2 different sides of the building will have 2 entries. It is complicated where buses will drop off in one area, but it's relatively close. You know, the pre-K will also have a convenience entry that can be manned. So that,
Staff.
so that kindergarten.
Staff.
Yes, thank you.
I let it go once, but then.
Okay, it's gonna come back out by accident. So, again, these are just feasibility studies, but we're trying to think about scale at this level and how we break the building down and get 2 identities, but at the same time allow cars and buses to provide access and short walks as much as possible. If I do get back to the bigger question that was being asked by the gentleman, there is overall more green space there now than we have in the future. So it is a bigger building and there's more parking, so some green space has gone away. But we're also, but not required green space like, you know, or dimensional space like softball fields or the amount of play space that the children need. We're trying to use the site more efficiently. So, you know, I just want to make sure that that was understood, that I think there might be in the range of 250,000 square feet of green space now, and in the future it'll have 188. So, you know, this larger building and more parking does have to come from somewhere, but we're not making it come from anything critical like softball fields or required play space.
Now, is the request for, is 2 softball fields a requirement, or is that just a guideline that we're?
Right, it's what exists now, so I think if we could retain them on the site without impacting educationally what we need for that site, that would be a preference. Now, if it gets to the point where we realize we couldn't, because it was gonna compromise some of what we needed to do educationally, I think that we would rethink that.
Yeah, it's not a requirement.
Right.
But they are the high school softball
Right.
fields, one's the varsity field,
Right.
one's the JV field. And then it's used through.
Also by-
Right, and whatnot. But because OA is right there, they are used.
And what I do like about this orientation, I guess, or this layout, is it keeps the fields isolated somewhat, so then if they were used, it's not like the last option here, where you feel as though people using this varsity field would be coming all the way almost through this campus. I feel like in this option, you've created this great separation. You have parking, maybe for the weekends, for after school, so I think that's a benefit.
But if used from the high school, it would be walking through.
That's true, unless you would, correct.
But it's certainly doable, and I think it's nice to have them.
They'll be all warmed up by the time they get there.
Yeah. It's a new field, yeah, I think it's great.
Okay, so what's next? What do we need to do
That's
about
a good
next?
cue, the next step.
I think we have a forum, yeah.
Do we want to consider a poll?
I don't have a vote on the agenda,
Okay.
so if we need to take a vote for which ones you want to move forward, is that what you're asking for? We need the agenda to say.
Well, we can do that at the time that we vote to set the.
Yep.
Which is part of this next steps. So we've gone ahead and updated the next steps. The only thing that we added were the board dates for the schematic design submission right here, the submission and the board date. Nothing's changed. Still targeting that January 15th submission. And carrying, sorry, back here, the FAS. I have the FAS.
But,
Thank you. So we have the PSR, or PDP, the PSR, and the schematic design submissions, all the way up through September, October of 2019. Just a kind of a snip of the schedule. PDP, again, nothing.
Is your FAS date? May 29th. So FAS is when we sit in front of it's really essentially a subcommittee of the MSBA board, some of the board members are on it. And what their focus is, they take the educational program and they take the building floor plans and really just side by side, and they're trying to make sure that all the boxes are checked off. And it's sort of it's a preemptive meeting before they make their recommendation to the board of directors. They look for really a seal of approval from that facility assessment subcommittee. Big milestone.
So,
Who
again,
usually goes into that, I'm sorry?
they have MSBA has a regulation for who goes, but the three people that go are the superintendent, director of facilities, and
Facilities sometimes.
School facilities or?
school facilities.
Yeah.
Yep. There's usually somebody else who's very involved in the education.
Designation of the school committee.
So that means, but the superintendent, I mean, essentially the superintendent will that role as well, right?
She's already on it though.
Right.
She's automatic, and
Okay.
it's a designee of the school.
Okay.
Mr. Sullivan,
Can we go back
excuse me,
to
Mr.
that?
Sullivan wanted you to go
Yep.
back to two
Two or
slides.
one?
Yeah.
Right here.
This is just,
Is this the one you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
and these dates, I think, just so you know, Mr. all of this is on the website, because none of this, we've all seen this before.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, but just if you wanted to look at them.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
So I guess we need to talk about next dates for
Yep.
us.
So we need to schedule one more,
Yeah.
school planning committee meeting. Early January would be my guess.
Before the 15th.
Before the 15th.
It's not much January to use.
No, I know. And we will need to have a vote for what options we are going to include in the submission to the MSBA, and also to submit the preliminary design program package to the MSBA. So 2 votes.
Do you want to do a date and a snow date? January is just, I don't know, we have not had the best luck always with
Yeah.
scheduling things in early January.
Sure.
And will you be at that meeting, will kind of you walk through the entire submittal with the?
I think we're gonna start putting that together tonight based on the information that we have and the most likely information that we're gonna have, that those 2 options would most likely be.
We can bring both what we have, where we're at, whatever date it is, we have the.
Right.
There's gonna be information from that meeting that
That's
I'll
gonna go
need,
in.
I'll need to write up that needs to go
Okay.
into it.
It's a large submission.
So,
Yeah, it's about that.
I know.
6 inches
Yeah,
tall.
yeah.
So it looks like the 9th.
The 9th,
Probably.
Wednesday, the 9th.
I just hope it doesn't snow.
And if it did snow,
We can look ahead at a 10-day forecast.
yeah. Let's just say right now, Wednesday, the 9th. And I really need people to check their schedules and let me know, because we will need a quorum of that, so we can think about.
What is it, one?
I have to, yeah,
So we only
I
have
have to go
7.
back and
We
look.
have 7
Yeah,
voting members.
yeah.
No, I know, well, but even if there were, I'm not sure we have to.
Other questions or anything that people need us to think about before we adjourn? Anything you need from us before we adjourn?
Do you guys have any?
No, I think the only thing I was gonna ask is, I believe there's a school committee meeting in between the last.
For the education?
Yes, we approved the educational program.
Okay, great, we do need, we're
We
gonna,
do
the
need
final copy
we
of
need
that.
a copy of that, and a certified copy of that, I believe.
Of the ed program,
No, of the minutes.
of the minutes, okay?
Yep, I need a copy of the program.
Yeah, because there were some.
Some tweaks, whatever
Yeah, there
those tweaks were.
Yeah.
Dan and I will start to put a list together of documents that we're gonna need from
The district.
the district. probably send that out tomorrow.
I think so.
Yeah, I think we'll send it out tomorrow.
Probably, I think we need to look at what it is, we give you an ample time, because there are some things you probably do not have that you'll need to put together.
So you'll send it to
Alicia and
Alicia,
you.
and maybe even, I don't know if some of it is gonna be facility related stuff, so maybe CC David on.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion, so moved.
Second,
Second.
everybody in favor?